Well, he may be the original outsider, but my friend and former colleague here at Sky and now One Nation leader in the New South Wales Upper House, Mark Latham, is never scared of getting inside the news or outside of it and generating a few headlines himself. Yesterday it was announced that Mark Latham is leading an inquiry into a proposed New South Wales bill that could see school lessons discussing gender fluidity banned and allow parents to pull children out of classes they, the parents, disagree with. The Education Amendment Parental Rights Bill would stop schools from providing instruction on ideologically based and political material. Hallelujah, Mark. That is inconsistent with the wishes of parents. The private members' bill aims to ban the promotion of gender fluidity in schools. Mark Latham joins me now from his own basement, deep beneath Macquarie Street, perhaps. Mark, how are you, mates?
Good, thanks, Rowan. Always good to be with you.
Great to have you here, Mark. So look, first, how deep-rooted is this gender fluidity stuff within our education system, and what sort of opposition to the private members' bill are you facing?
Well, it's an ideology, gender fluidity, that does run through the school system. Last year, the New South Wales Education Department sent out to about 70,000 government school teachers guides on gender fluidity, including penis tucking and breast binding and related rubbish.
Unbelievable, yeah.
And you've got the New South Wales Teachers Federation running professional development courses, or they did until recently, saying that, here's a list of 8 areas in the curriculum where you can work in gender fluidity, including visiting the 2 supposedly gay penguins at the Sydney Aquarium. So there's all sorts of wacky stuff. These people will stop at nothing. And if the New South Wales government was serious about banning the insidious Safe Schools program, then it should support this parental rights legislation that says that whether it's up front or through the back door, if you're teaching anything other than biological science, if you're running the postmodernist line that gender is socially constructed, that a 7-year-old boy only thinks he's male because he was dressed in blue and played with a Tonka truck, then you can't be doing that. You've got to stick to the science. So, Rowan, all that talk, follow the science, follow the science. Well, here's a chance for people to do that.
Well, Mark, it's great that you are actually bringing these issues into the New South Wales Parliament. I wish you were bringing them into the federal parliament as well, but Australia had that chance back in 2004. But, mate, what sort of, what opposition are you finding in what quarters? Do you think the Liberals, because I've criticised the New South Wales Liberals, they seem to be a schizophrenic party where half of them should be in the Greens and the other half actually seem to have vaguely conservative principles. But are you finding resistance within the Liberal Party to what you're suggesting?
Well, it's hard to know what they'll come up with. You've got people like Matt Keane who belong in the Greens with his 100% renewable and supporting Joe Biden and so forth. But hopefully there's some sensible people, a few remnant Conservatives inside the New South Wales Liberal Party who agree with the 3 propositions in the bill. And they really are common sense. One, that parents should be consulted at the beginning of every school year, know exactly what's going to be taught in the classroom throughout the year, so they've got awareness of what's happening to their children in schools. Secondly, the parents have got a legal right to take their children out of classes where they believe the material doesn't accord with their family values, morals and ethics. And thirdly, that schools stick to the biological science. They don't teach gender as a social construction. And the other opposition comes from, the hysterical people on the left. There is a transgender lobby. They're saying this bill wipes the rights of existing transgender students. That's not true. Those students can go to school, get counselling services, hopefully a very good education for their future. What the bill stops teachers and counsellors from doing is pushing gender fluidity and social construction theory upon the students. It calls on those staff inside schools to basically do what's been in the biology textbook for decades, that is just teach biological science along the lines that, with very few exceptions, people are born male or female.
Now, Mark, just to change the tone a little, we're approaching Australia Day. You are a great, I'll let this secret into the audience this evening, that you cook a terrific barbecue. You're one of the great Barbie chefs. It is that time of year when a new lamb ad comes out. Back in the 90s, they were by far the best ads in Australia, with the wonderful political incorrectness of Sam Kekovich berating vegan hippies and so on for being un-Australian. That all went out the window and the lamb ads all went woke and were churned out the most lamentable, pathetic ads for the last few years. But I'm pleased to say maybe they're back on form a little bit. They've done one which is actually pretty funny when you see the whole thing, mocking those premiers who have closed the states and put up walls between us all. I'm just going to play a little bit of the ad for you, Mark, and then get your thoughts on it.
Today marks 10 years since our once united nation was divided by the Great State War. An increasing number...
I love the smell of lamb in the morning.
We did it. The United States of Australia.
Nah, it's just Australia.
Mark, your thoughts?
Well, it's great to see a bit of irreverence back in the lamb ads. You know, irreverence is the backbone of Australian humour, larrikin humour in particular, and we haven't seen it in those ads for quite some time. I'd like to see more of Sam Kekovich, who was once the real star. He's a great man, Sam Kekovich, and I suppose it's a very good ad because it's saying Australia should be one nation. Right.
There you go. What a great line. What a great line. Fantastic. Well, listen, the main point of the ad is to do with obviously, poking fun at all the different ways that the different premiers have handled the different states. Gladys Berejiklian, in my opinion, has been pretty good up until now, keeping New South Wales fairly open while the other states have gone all kind of crazy and paranoid and hysterical. But, Mark, I'm just a bit worried on this vaccine thing. Is the mask, as it were, slipping? Are we seeing a more authoritarian Gladys who wants it, I think the headline in the Daily Telegraph was no jab, no pub. In other words, you're not allowed into the pubs or you're not allowed to go to work unless you've had the jab. Your thoughts on that, Mark?
Well, Rowan, it was always the danger that all this power the premiers have got, ultimately they'd be drunk on power. They've got more power than the Prime Minister. The national policy, the Morrison government policy, and it's the right policy, is that the vaccines must be voluntary. And for Gladys Berejiklian to say you can't go to the pub or club, I suppose they'll include cafes and restaurants in that, unless you've had the vaccine, there'll be a whole bunch of Australians, millions of Australians in the middle of this thinking, well, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but I'd like to have a longer look at the side effects of the vaccines that have been rushed on to the system. And I might take another 6 or 12 months, maybe 18 months to make sure it's 100% perfectly safe before I was vaccinated. Or you'll get people like myself, it's 45 years since I've had a vaccine. I don't feel threatened by COVID. I think the chances of getting it are quite tiny. So, there won't be people rushing in. So Gladys Berejiklian is potentially banning hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people in New South Wales from going to the pub, the club, restaurants, cafes, the list will go on. The economic carnage on those venues will be huge. Does anyone in that government think through the economic consequences of what they say? This is unnecessary. It doesn't accord with the national policy, and Gladys ought to drop that line immediately.
Mark Latham, always so great to have you here on Sky, and good luck with that gender fluidity bill, and I hope the Libs get behind you because we need to see that in New South Wales schools for the sake of New South Wales parents, but more importantly for the sake of New South Wales kids. Mark Latham, thanks so much, mate. And happy
Thanks very much,
Australia Day.
Rowan. Cheers.
Cheers, mate.